When you stand in front of that mirror, you're not just looking at your reflection. You're standing in front of the battlefield. And most people never understand that. They think the war is out there in the world against circumstances, against other people, against what life throws at them. But the truth is simpler and far more uncomfortable. The first battle, and the most important one, is happening in the mirror. That's where you meet the version of yourself that you've been dragging through life. The one built from excuses, shortcuts, and comfortable lies. And the hardest thing you will ever do is face that person without flinching. Because the mirror doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care about your dreams, your potential, or the stories you tell everyone else. It reflects exactly who you are right now. And that's where most people tap out. They don't want to see the reality of their habits, their discipline, their effort, or the lack of it. So they turn away, and by turning away, they lose the only battle that truly matters. You can deceive the world for a long time, but you can only deceive yourself for so long before the consequences catch up. The moment you stop negotiating with your excuses is the moment something shifts. Goggins talks about that brutally honest conversation with yourself, the one where you stop softening the truth. Stay hard, you stop pretending you're giving your best. You stop acting like the universe owes you something. That level of honesty is uncomfortable because it removes your safety nets. You can't hide behind circumstances anymore. You can't blame your past, your environment, or your genetics. It's just you and the truth. And the truth is a mirror that cuts deeper than any external criticism ever could. And here's the thing. Most people think self-honesty is about guilt or shame. It's not. It's about clarity. When you look into the mirror and tell yourself the truth, you're not attacking yourself. You're freeing yourself. You're stripping away the illusions that keep you stagnant. You're making space for a new identity to form. Stay hard. You're becoming the kind of person who can actually carry the weight of their own potential. But this only works if you're willing to confront the gap between who you are and who you say you want to be. Everybody talks about their goals. Everybody talks about wanting to be stronger, smarter, more disciplined, more successful. But the mirror exposes the gap between your words and your actions. It reveals the nights you skipped the workout, the mornings you slept in, the promises you made to yourself that you never followed through on. And if that stings, good. It means there's still something inside you that cares about who you're becoming. The mirror becomes the training ground for your character, not because it flatters you, but because it challenges you. It forces you to strip your identity down to its foundations. From there, you get to build a new one, brick by brick, rep by rep, choice by choice. Every day you return to that mirror and earn the right to look yourself in the eye. You become a little less afraid of the truth and a little more committed to living it. And that commitment shifts everything. You stop being motivated only when you feel good. You stop collapsing under pressure. You stop quitting just because the path is painful. You start seeing the pain as feedback, not punishment. You start seeing the mirror as a checkpoint, not a courtroom. You start understanding that this internal battle is not something you win once, but something you win repeatedly, every day. Stay hard for the rest of your life, because the person in the mirror today is not the same one you'll face a month from now. Growth guarantees change, and change guarantees discomfort. But that discomfort is proof you're in the right fight. Proof you're no longer hiding. Stay hard, proof you're taking responsibility for who you are and who you want to become. And the more you confront yourself, the less power your old patterns have over you. The weak version of you starts losing ground. The stronger version starts taking shape. And when that happens, the world outside becomes a whole lot easier to face. In the end, the mirror isn't your enemy. It's your measurement. It shows you exactly where the battle must be fought. And if you can win there, stay hard. You can win anywhere. Stop avoiding the reflection. Face it, own it, and build the person you were meant to become. Pain has a way of revealing who you really are, not the version you present to the world, not the curated identity you put on social media, not the story you tell yourself when life feels comfortable. I'm talking about the version of you that shows up when the pressure hits, when your body is tired, when your mind is begging you to quit. That's the version pain exposes, and that's the version most people never take the time to study. They call pain the enemy, when really it's the doorway to their evolution. People misunderstand Goggins when he talks about suffering. They think he celebrates it for its own sake. They think he's chasing misery. But that's a shallow interpretation. The deeper truth is that pain is one of the few forces in life that cuts straight through your illusions and gets to the core of who you are. It's a feedback mechanism. It's a teacher. It's the voice that says, this is the edge of your current identity. Step beyond it. And you'll never be the same. When you avoid discomfort, you avoid growth. It's that simple. Stay hard. The mind loves patterns of comfort because comfort requires nothing from you. It protects your current identity. It shields you from change. But there's a psychological cost to that protection: stagnation. The longer you stay comfortable, the more fragile you become. You start negotiating with yourself. You start believing you're not capable of more. You shrink into the smallest version of your potential because comfort keeps whispering that you deserve ease instead of effort. Pain breaks that cycle. Pain wakes you up. Pain forces adaptation. Think about every major transformation in your life. Every time you got stronger, every time you became more disciplined, every time you elevated your standards, those moments didn't come wrapped in comfort. They came wrapped in struggle. They came when you were exhausted, uncertain, overwhelmed, or doubting yourself. They came when something inside you said, keep going, even though everything outside of you said, keep. That internal voice is what pain strengthens. Stay hard. Every time you push through discomfort, you're teaching your mind that it can handle more than it previously believed. You're expanding your psychological limits. You're building mental calluses, not to become numb, but to become stable, grounded, resilient. A callus is protection earned through friction. The same is true for your character. And the beautiful part is that pain doesn't lie. You can fake confidence. You can fake motivation. You can fake discipline when people are watching. But pain removes the audience, strips the excuses, and forces you to meet your real self. In that confrontation, you learn what you truly value. You learn whether your goals are real or just fantasies you use to feel good. You learn whether you're committed or merely interested. Pain gives you the opportunity to prove yourself to yourself. But here's where the deeper psychological shift happens. Once you stop running from pain and start using it, you unlock a new level of internal power. You stop seeing challenges as threats and start seeing them as training. You stop being intimidated by difficulty. You stop assuming that struggle means something is wrong. Instead, you start thinking like a warrior. Hard, if it hurts, it's working. If it's difficult, you're growing. If it's stretching you, it's shaping you. This is why Goggins says suffering is the true path to self-discovery. It's not about breaking yourself. It's about revealing the parts of you that have been asleep, untested, or underdeveloped. Stay hard. Pain shows you where you're weak, but it also shows you where you're strong. It highlights the gaps, but it also highlights the potential. Every time you endure a moment you once believed you couldn't handle, the boundary of who you are expands. And once it expands, it rarely contracts. That's how you evolve. Not by wishing, not by waiting, not by hoping the world gets easier, but by deciding that you'll get stronger. You learn that pain is not a punishment, it's a process. a process of refinement, a process of breaking the old you and allowing the new you to emerge with more clarity, more resilience, and more truth. And when you begin to respect that process, something profound happens. You no longer fear the struggle. You stop hesitating at the edge of difficulty. You stop retreating when life presses back. You start walking directly into the things that used to intimidate you, because you know they're shaping you into someone you can be proud of. In the end, pain is the doorway, but you have to make the choice to walk through it. Stop running from discomfort. Let it shape you into the person your potential has been waiting for. There's a specific kind of battle that happens inside your mind, and most people never learn how to fight it. Stay hard. They think the struggle they feel is a sign that something's wrong. They assume that if they were truly meant to improve, it would feel smooth, easy, linear. But growth is never quiet. Growth is a disruption. Growth is a confrontation with the parts of your mind that are wired for comfort, certainty, and self-preservation. This is why mental warfare isn't a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that you're entering the territory where transformation actually begins. The mind's first job is to protect you. It doesn't care about your potential. It doesn't care about your goals. It cares about safety. Stay hard. So when you take on something difficult, something uncomfortable, something that demands more from you than your current identity is ready to give, the mind pushes back. It whispers reasons to stop. It exaggerates the discomfort. It tries to pull you back to what feels familiar. People think that voice is a sign they're not strong enough. But the truth is that voice is a training ground. That resistance is the gym where the mind develops strength. It's not there to break you. It's there to test whether you're serious. Goggins learned that the voice in your head telling you to quit isn't your enemy, it's your starting point. It marks the threshold of your old limits. If you always obey that voice, your life becomes a repetition of your past. But if you learn to push a little bit beyond it, you start building a deeper kind of resilience that doesn't depend on emotions, but on identity. And this is where psychological depth really enters the picture. Most people try to avoid mental friction, not realizing that friction creates capacity. Every time you lean into that internal resistance, you're rewiring your nervous system. You're teaching your mind that discomfort is not danger. You're proving the world doesn't end when things get hard. You're reshaping your internal definitions of effort, fear, and struggle. The problem is, people misinterpret the mental war as a sign they're not cut out for the path they're on. They expect confidence before action. They wait for clarity before commitment. They believe the mind should be calm before they take the next step. But confidence comes from doing. Clarity comes from moving. Calm comes from exposure. The only way to win the battle in your mind is to step into the discomfort rather than retreat from it. That's how you shift the relationship you have with your own thoughts. When you stop responding to every fearful or lazy thought as if it's an order and instead treat it as noise, something powerful happens. The mind loses leverage. The voice that used to intimidate you becomes a reminder that you're exactly where you need to be. Goggins calls this building a go-to-war mindset. Not because life should be lived in constant aggression, but because most people never push themselves far enough to find out who they really are. They stay inside the mental comfort zone that tells them you're doing enough, when deep down they know they're not even close to their potential. Mental warfare forces you to confront that gap. It forces you to see that the enemy isn't outside. It's the weaker patterns inside that want comfort over growth. And when you start winning those internal battles, everything outside becomes easier. The problems that used to overwhelm you no longer shake you. The tasks that once felt impossible become manageable. The judgment from others stops mattering. You start becoming someone who moves forward even when the mind resists. And that kind of person is unstoppable. Here's the psychological truth: your mind adapts to the level of challenge you consistently face. If you avoid difficulty, your tolerance shrinks. If you embrace it, your tolerance expands. That expansion is what creates mental toughness. Not some mythical, stay hard, unbreakable personality you're born with, but a practiced ability to push through mental friction. The more you expose yourself to discomfort, the less threatened you feel by it. The more you push through resistance, the less power it has over you. Eventually, the mental battle stops being something you dread and becomes something you expect, even welcome, because you understand what it's doing for you. You start seeing challenges as invitations to grow rather than obstacles to avoid. That's when you shift from surviving life to mastering it. And the truth is simple: your greatest breakthroughs will come on the other side of mental resistance. Not before it, not around it, but through it. Stop fearing the battle in your mind. Step into it and let it sculpt you into someone you didn't know you could be. Stay hard. There's a moment in every person's life when they realize the real opponent was never the world. It was the version of themselves that settled. The version that got used to doing the minimum. The version that avoided pressure, avoided risk, avoided truth. That common you becomes so familiar that you start believing it's your identity. You start thinking that's just the way you are. But that's the lie that keeps most people from ever touching their full potential. The uncommon version of you is in there, waiting, but it can't emerge until you defeat the common one. People romanticize greatness. They think becoming exceptional is about talent, luck, opportunity, or some rare quality a few people are born with. But the deeper psychological reality is that greatness is the result of a very personal war. A war fought in daily choices, invisible struggles, and private victories. The uncommon you is not created by external praise or public achievements. It's built quietly, internally, through decisions that most people are unwilling to make. The common you seeks comfort because comfort feels safe. Comfort feels predictable. Comfort doesn't challenge the ego. But comfort is also the environment where mediocrity grows. The uncommon you is forged in discomfort because discomfort is where the boundaries of your identity get pushed. Stay hard. It's where you discover what you're truly capable of. Not what you've been conditioned to believe about yourself, but what actually exists deep beneath the layers of habit, fear, and self-doubt. Stay hard. This is why Goggins always talks about doing the things you don't want to do. It's not about suffering for suffering's sake. It's about choosing the path that forces the common you to break apart. Every time you choose discipline over ease, every time you choose effort over excuses, every time you choose progress over postponement, you strike a blow against that weaker identity. It doesn't die in a single moment. It fades through repeated exposure to your higher standards. And those standards matter more than people realize. Your standards are the invisible lines you draw for yourself in every situation. They determine how hard you work, how consistently you show up, how much responsibility you take, and how far you're willing to go. The common you has low standards because low standards don't require accountability. But the uncommon you rises because it refuses to compromise. It refuses to negotiate. It refuses to bend its identity to its comfort. But here's the depth most people miss. Becoming uncommon is not about outworking everyone else. It's about out-evolving who you were yesterday. When you hear people say, be uncommon, they often think it means being better than others. But Goggins never meant it that way. He meant being better than your old self. That's the only comparison that matters. The uncommon you is measured not by external competition, but by internal progression. When you adopt that mindset, the world becomes less intimidating. You stop worrying about how far ahead or behind other people are. You stop obsessing over validation. You stop needing applause. You realize the real scoreboard is built inside your own character. Every day becomes an opportunity to build internal victories, and those victories accumulate into a level of self-respect that can't be shaken. And that's the key. Once you start living as the uncommon you, the world responds differently. Opportunities don't just appear because of luck. They appear because you're prepared. Challenges don't crush you. They reveal your strength. Resistance doesn't discourage you. It sharpens you. You stop being reactive to life and start becoming intentional with life. But you only reach that level when you stop protecting the common you. When you stop defending your old habits. When you stop justifying your own limitations. The common version of you will try to survive. It will whisper excuses. It will seek comfort. It will remind you of every fear you've ever had. But every time you ignore that voice and push anyway, you reinforce the identity of the person you're becoming. And over time, you won't just be doing uncommon things. You will become uncommon. You'll carry yourself differently. You'll think differently. You'll operate with a level of discipline, clarity, and resilience that most people never experience. Not because you were born special, but because you made the decision to stop living as the watered-down version of yourself. In the end, greatness isn't about being extraordinary. It's about refusing to remain ordinary. Break the common version of yourself. Build the uncommon one, and let your life speak for the standards you chose to live by. Accountability is one of the most misunderstood forces in personal transformation. People hear the word and think it means blaming yourself, beating yourself up, or carrying guilt like a burden. But accountability in its rawest and most powerful form is liberation. It's the act of putting the truth on the table with no filter and no negotiation. It's looking at your life, your habits, your choices, your patterns, and saying, this is on me, not in a way that crushes you, stay hard, but in a way that empowers you to finally do something about it. That's why Goggins talks so much about the accountability mirror. It isn't just a motivational concept. It's a psychological tool. A place where you strip away the layers of illusion and expose the parts of yourself that keep you stuck. You don't go to that mirror to feel good. You go to see the truth. And the truth is uncomfortable because it demands action. It demands ownership. It demands change. Most people avoid accountability because they're afraid of what they'll see. They're afraid to confront their inconsistencies. They're afraid to admit that they've been operating below their potential. And instead of dealing with that discomfort, they build elaborate stories to justify their weaknesses. They blame circumstances. They blame timing. They blame other people. They blame life itself. Anything to avoid looking inward. But there's a psychological cost to living without accountability. When you lie to yourself long enough, you lose trust in your own word. Stay hard. You start doubting your goals because deep down you know you're not backing them with real action. You start negotiating with your own potential, convincing yourself that maybe this is enough, or maybe this is just who I am. That's the old self clinging to survival. And as long as you protect that version of you with excuses, it will continue to dominate your life. Accountability cuts that pattern at the root. When you hold yourself accountable, you expose the gap between who you are and who you want to be. You face your flaws with precision instead of emotion. You speak bluntly to yourself, not cruelly, but truthfully. You say, didn't do what I said I would do. I'm capable of more. I'm avoiding the work. When you start speaking like that, something inside you wakes up. You can't hide anymore. You can't pretend anymore. The truth forces movement. And here's the powerful part: accountability doesn't just point out the mistakes. It clarifies the path forward. When you're honest about where you're falling short, you know exactly what needs to be fixed. You know which habits need tightening. You know which behaviors need eliminating. You know where your discipline is leaking. The accountability mirror becomes a guide, not a judge. This is where the transformation begins. When you consistently confront yourself with honesty, your standards rise. You start expecting more from yourself because you've removed the excuses that kept you small. You stop tolerating your own half effort. You stop accepting mediocre performance. You sharpen your identity by sharpening your honesty. And as your standards rise, something else happens. The weak version of you begins to die. The version that loves shortcuts. The version that hides from pressure. The version that collapses under discomfort. Stay hard. Accountability doesn't allow that version to survive because you're no longer giving it protection. You're no longer giving it justification. You're no longer feeding it with lies. Instead, you're feeding the stronger version. The version that can take criticism, even from yourself, without crumbling. The version that can look at a failure and see an opportunity instead of a defeat. The version that can be exposed and still remain committed. Stay hard. That version grows when you stop shielding it from the truth. And the more accountable you become, the more self-respect you build. You start trusting your own reflection. You start believing in your own word because you've proven that your word means something. There's a deep psychological shift when your identity becomes grounded in honesty rather than comfort. You walk differently. You carry yourself differently. You live with clarity instead of confusion. Accountability becomes a weapon, not against yourself, but against the old patterns that kept you stuck. It becomes a tool for carving out the person you're trying to become. It becomes the internal discipline that anchors every other aspect of your growth. And once you embrace it fully, you stop hiding from your flaws and start using them as fuel. At the end of the day, accountability isn't about being hard on yourself. It's about being real with yourself. Because the truth will either imprison you if you avoid it or transform you if you confront it. Stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself the truth. Then act like someone who deserves to hear it. There's a moment in everyone's life when motivation disappears. It doesn't matter how inspired you felt the night before, how hyped you were after watching a video, or how fired up your goals made you. At some point, that emotional high fades. And when it fades, most people fold, they step back, they slow down, they tell themselves, I'll start again tomorrow. But that's exactly why so many never break through. Stay hard. They build their lives around how they feel instead of what they committed to. And when you build your life on feelings, you build it on sand. Goggins learned early that relying on motivation is a losing strategy. Motivation is unstable. It's inconsistent. It comes and goes like weather. One day it's with you. The next day it disappears. And if you tie your progress to motivation, your life becomes reactive. You become someone who moves only when it's easy, who works only when it's exciting. Stay hard, who pushes only when the conditions are perfect. That's how the old you survives. That's how the weaker version keeps winning. Discipline is the opposite of that. Discipline is the structure you build so you don't need to negotiate with yourself every morning. It's the decision you make long before the moment of discomfort arrives. When you're disciplined, you don't wait to feel like it. You don't ask yourself, do I want to do this today? You simply execute. It's not emotional anymore, it's automatic. But discipline doesn't just come from nowhere. It's something you build through repetition and identity. You develop it by proving to yourself over and over that you follow through on what you say, even when you don't feel like it. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your discipline gets a little stronger. Every time you break one, it gets weaker. Discipline is not about punishment or restriction. It's about freedom. It frees you from your moods. It frees you from procrastination. It frees you from the internal chaos that comes from living inconsistently. The real battle, the psychological battle, stay hard, happens in those quiet moments when nobody is watching, when it's dark, when you're tired, when the bed is warm, when the workout feels impossible, when quitting would feel so much easier. That's where the war is fought. That's where you decide who you're going to be. Not in the big moments, not in the speeches, not in the declarations, in the repetition of choosing discipline over and over again, even when it feels pointless, even when it feels invisible. Most people don't lose to life. They lose to their own negotiations. They let their mind talk them out of the very habits required to reach their dreams. Your mind is persuasive. It knows your weaknesses better than anyone. It knows exactly what excuses you'll accept. It knows how to rationalize quitting in a way that feels reasonable. That inner voice will say, "You deserve a break," or "You've done enough," or "You'll get back on track next week." And if you're ruled by feelings, you'll listen, because feelings always want comfort, and comfort always wants to protect the old identity. Discipline overrides that voice, not by silencing it, because that voice never disappears, but by refusing to negotiate with it. Instead of arguing, instead of debating, you build a non-negotiable standard. You create a baseline for your life that you stick to no matter how you feel. When you reach that point, something powerful happens. Your emotions stop controlling your actions. You begin to act from identity, not impulse. And the identity you build through discipline is unshakable. You become someone who can trust themselves. Someone who follows through. Someone who achieves things not because it was easy, not because they were motivated, but because they were committed. There's a deep psychological transformation that happens when you stop waiting for the right mood to take action. You develop self-respect. You develop confidence that isn't built on comfort but on proof. You've seen yourself do the hard things. You've seen yourself show up when you didn't want to. You've seen yourself overcome the internal resistance that stops most people. This is why discipline is so much more powerful than motivation. Motivation inspires you. Discipline transforms you. And transformation doesn't happen in moments of inspiration. It happens in moments of resistance. When everything in you wants to pull back and you lean in instead, and you'll notice something else: the more disciplined you become, the less dramatic the struggle feels. The things that used to break you become routine. The tasks that once felt overwhelming feel manageable. Stay hard. Your threshold for discomfort increases because you've trained yourself to move forward regardless of how you feel. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. And most people never cross it because they spend their lives waiting for motivation to carry them across. But that bridge doesn't move. You have to move yourself. Stop depending on how you feel. Let your actions be driven by who you're becoming, not by the mood you're in.